This Fed Gov Today program is sponsored by NVIDIA and Carasoft. On this edition of Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose, a new mission for a key military agency. Agencies start looking for the gas pedal on their AI efforts and managing the data deluge at the National Science Foundation. CIO Dorothy Aronson is here. Welcome to Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency will drive toward 5 strategic objectives. Those objectives will push the agency to what its leader calls a new mission and end state. Vice Admiral Frank Whitworth is director of NGA. Admiral, welcome. It's great to talk to you. Thanks for joining me today. Those 5 strategic objectives: enhance operational readiness, attract and develop your workforce, build resiliency by strengthening partnerships, strengthen stewardship of geo resources, accelerate technology acquisition and integration. Of the entire landscape in your portfolio, how did you determine those were the 5 that you wanted to focus on, sir?
Well, first, thanks for the opportunity to be here. We actually got our leadership together and we had an offsite, and we realized that there were so many things that we wanted to do, but we had to make this memorizable. We needed to compartmentalize this into something that our 14,500 people in our workforce could carry with them and literally repeat. And so we decided on these 5, and it begins with that first one, which is really about the mission and operational readiness for the combatant commands, the Secretary of Defense, as well as the entire IC, the intelligence community. So that was an easy one to list first.
What does operational readiness mean for NGA, sir?
So imagine, if you will, the gravity of identifying a behavior that's not quite right, or a piece of equipment that shouldn't be where it's located, and making that declaration to decision makers. Or in a combat situation, identifying it possibly for neutralization. There is serious gravity to that positive identification. In the laws of armed conflict, we refer to things, principles like humanity, necessity, proportionality. And I think a lot of people in uniform and our civilian leadership know exactly what those things are. Distinction, so distinguishing combatants from non-combatants, is, I would argue, one of the hardest things. And we are a vanguard of distinction. Our people make these positive identification calls on an hourly basis, and I am in awe of their ability to do that.
That feeds readiness across the rest of the joint force in what way then, sir?
Well, let's take targeting as an example. If an individual, a commander, has target engagement authority, that commander is going to count on a positive identification that he or she can say is correct, because positive identification is the heart of the targeting matter. Indications and warning is another place where if we say that something is out of place, a force is where they should not be, we have to be correct, because that could actually lead to a decision to employ force or to display force or something like that. And so for our civilian leadership, our military leadership, everyone's counting on us to be correct.
I note in that description you talked about your workforce, your people, before you talked about technology. What's the state of the workforce? What do you need skill set wise more of than you have now maybe? And where is your workforce today in your view, sir?
Sure, I'll start with the last question first. So we have about 9,000 people here in the Northern Virginia area. It's technically in Springfield, Fort Belvoir. And then we have about 3,500 or so people in the St. Louis region, about 500 in Denver, and then a really important, what I call a swing arm of almost 2,000 people who are located all of the combatant commands and all of the services and centers of excellence, other intelligence agencies, joint task forces all over the world, frankly. And we get together on a daily basis. Every weekday we'll have a meeting at 8:45, and we will have representation from all of those disparate points of the earth and our people that are embedded with those commanders. And it's very important for us. This is what distinguishes us from just being an intelligence agency. We are a combat support agency.
As I've tracked NGA over the years, one of the ongoing challenges is the way the nature of geospatial intelligence has changed. So much of it's available open source almost now. How has that changed the way that you and your colleagues look at the mission of NGA?
It's an additional source of imagery for us and an additional source of potential truth. I think it is actually empowering to have commercial imagery allow us to tell the tale without necessarily compromising really sensitive sources and methods. And I think this is borne out in the last several years quite effectively. So for us, it adds complexity to what's called collection orchestration. These are the unsung heroes at NGA who are responsible for taking the totality of all of the collection that exists, whether it's from sensitive sources or from commercial sources, even open source, and helping us determine the timing relative to things like weather and outages, and when the combatant commander or when the Secretary of Defense or when the Director of National Intelligence needs that information.
I want to go back to your 5 strategic objectives. The third one is building resiliency by by strengthening partnerships, rather. Who are the right partners, or who are the best partners for NGA right now?
So I have to begin with our partners in the foreign ranks. I would say that our foreign partnerships are certainly one of the empowering features we have from a relationship perspective. Academia is very important as well. We are a group of people who rely on especially STEM and the earth sciences, and so we have a very strong relationship with a lot of academia. And then, of course, industry partners. And so some of the cutting-edge technological IT and I would say AI and ML and some of the things that are on the very cutting edge, we have very strong relationships with industry.
I note that regarding technology, you talked about a moment ago, I note from your remarks at GeoInt over the summer, you talked about the acquisition's not the right word, Project Maven is now housed at National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. What has that meant for the way that you deliver the information that you deliver to the Joint Force, and what has that meant for the technology team that's inside NGA?
So Maven is, I think, a very good decision made by the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. For about 5 years, it was a project. It was dedicated to build inertia and to build interest in industry, in AI and ML for defense purposes. We realized that the wetware that we have in our people at NGA is quite empowering for ML and ultimately AI. So to train the machine, you have to have a good source of people who actually see, judge, and put structure in and indexable data so that the machine itself can learn. This was a very good decision. Our rapid rate of detections is proving quite effective right now at ML and ultimately AI. And this is going to confront the deluge control issue that we have. We're creating a good problem, which is to have a lot of data to sift through. We have to be able to triage and queue those trained eyes ultimately, and so the teaming that's going to occur with these machines through AI and ML and Maven is really important to us.
When you talked about the work that you're doing at GeoInt this summer, you referenced a new mission and end state. What's that new mission, and what does the end state look like? How will you know that you're on track to achieve it?
It's a high bar. When we had that offsite with all of our leaders, I asked them, I said, what would you recommend as our end state, which is effectively our vision? And they said GeoInt supremacy. So GeoInt supremacy is a tall bar. I said, are you sure you don't want to go with superiority? And they were insistent to the person. We have to be the best in the world at all times. We have to ensure that this vanguard of distinction is for real, that the calls that we make are well in advance of need in some cases, that we're predictive, that we're accurate, and I salute them for setting the bar so high.
How will you know that you are on track to achieve that, or that you've achieved that at some? Maybe there's no end state to know that you've achieved it and you can maintain. I don't know.
Constant assessment. I think that this is certainly what any large organization needs to take stock of, is how we're progressing to an end state like that. We will have another offsite where we will actually go through some of the facets of GeoInt supremacy to see if we're on our way. Maven will factor into that. Our predictive calls, our INW, our indications and warning, our contributions to targeting, the way that our people are being trained, the readiness of our people, whether they're happy, these all contribute. The concentric circles of our mission is so compelling, and so I would tell you that we're constantly assessing if we're well on our way, and I would tell you we are.
Admiral, it's great to talk to you. Thanks very much for joining me today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
can find a link to watch more about NGA's strategic objectives at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, agencies start looking for the gas pedal on their AI efforts. Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Don't miss the first show of the new Fed Gov Today series, AI in Depth, coming Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 p.m. Explore the world of AI in government with leaders from DHS, HUD, VA, AWS, Palo Alto Networks, and EY. You'll learn how artificial intelligence is transforming the federal government. AI in Depth, Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and on the Fed Gov Today YouTube channel. Welcome back. The Department of Veterans Affairs is just one agency that's working on driving its use of artificial intelligence faster. You can learn more about what VA is doing next week on the Fed Gov Today podcast. That acceleration at VA will revolve around several pillars. According to Rob Zuppert, he's Intelligence Community Lead at NVIDIA. Rob, welcome. Thanks for coming on the program. VA, lots of other agencies across the government doing a lot with artificial intelligence. What are the pillars that they should build and then build on to really do artificial intelligence effectively?
Definitely. Thank you very much, Francis, for the time to join Fed Gov Today. There are three challenges that the world's facing that's also impacting the government. The first is sustainability. Data centers require more power efficiency. Essentially, how do we get more throughput, more work done with the data centers that we have today? The second is, and we all heard about ChatGPT, is generative AI. Generative AI is taxing our data centers, requiring us to rethink how do we deploy compute for these key artificial intelligence applications. And the last being the digital transformation, essentially getting value out of the data that we have today. And at NVIDIA, since 2012, with the big bang in artificial intelligence, researchers took NVIDIA GPUs combined with large amounts of data and deep neural networks to really have the big bang in AI. And that kicked off this whole revolution. And for the past 10 years, NVIDIA has been on this journey to figure out exactly how do we help accelerate and address some of the performance considerations that are required from a data center with accelerated computing, and then how also do we provide for our customers, for the ecosystem, the platform of artificial intelligence. And with that, we've created an AI platform. It's created on three key pillars. The first is an AI supercomputer. Many people know NVIDIA for our technology in GPU computing. We've taken that and optimized that for artificial intelligence. The second piece is creating a platform service. Essentially, we have what we call NVIDIA AI Enterprise. This is an end-to-end AI solution focused on data analytics and data science. And the last is really important to developers. Developers help take the use cases and applications and make them real for end users. And we do that through our acceleration libraries. So this is a full stack optimized computing solution, both software and hardware, that's really critical to accelerate artificial intelligence in government today.
When you go into an agency and you talk to them, and some agencies maybe for the first time,
right,
what's the groundwork that they should lay before they get ready to really build something? Because it sounds like you've got the tools, that's fine.
Yes.
But what do they need in order to be prepared to go on this journey, Rob?
Definitely the first piece in our go-to-market in all industries is really focusing on mission applications and use cases. Who are the developers for those mission applications and use cases, and what do you want to accomplish? Level setting expectations on what you're trying to accomplish, I think, is the first piece. The second piece is data. Looking at what data you have, what data do you need, and what data is accessible to be able to training, because the pipeline that we need to go through for artificial intelligence is the data prep process, the training aspect, inference, and then deploying to scale. And so this is a journey, and starting at the forefront of what are the use cases and applications, how do we help those developers be successful? That's our approach to the market. We start there with the developers and the use cases, enabling them to be successful.
What's the biggest obstacle that you've seen agencies have regarding data? Because everybody's trying to get their arms around it. We'll talk about that data in a moment, inside one in particular.
Right.
But where do agencies struggle, and where do they do well in some cases with data, do you think?
I think each agency is unique in this regard with data. I think the biggest thing that we see is just stovepipes of data, of bringing all the data together. I think cloud has naturally helped that. bringing all the data lakes together where the data is accessible. But that's definitely a challenge, I think, that we see in a lot of the agencies that we support. What do they do well? I think there are, depending on the agency, they do have data that's already labeled in some instances. And so I think knowing what data they have, there are a lot of regulations and requirements in government to know what data you have. And so I think that piece of it is really key. But bringing the data together, knowing what data you have and bringing it together to get it ready for the data prep process and artificial intelligence is a really key piece.
Is there, what's the big maintenance issues that you expect to see agencies deal with regarding staying ready and maintaining their infrastructures to be able to deliver on the potential of AI, Rob?
That's a great question. The one thing that we see, ChatGPT I think was a great example that it's the first application that hit 100 million users in 2 months. And so we see this rapid exponential increase in the digital transformation. Applications are constantly changing and the compute requirements are just going through the roof. And at the same time, technology companies like NVIDIA are innovating at the speed of light. And so I think the private-public partnership that's really required and what our team here at NVIDIA, focusing on the federal sector, is really focused on doing is creating that bridge to ensuring that we have that partnership. What's coming? Where are we focused as a company? And then in return, we can help the government in their planning process and ensure that they're looking 2, 3, 5 years out for their infrastructure, what applications are coming that they need to think through and plan out that infrastructure for the future.
Rob, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Francis.
You can learn more about accelerating AI across government at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, managing the data deluge at the National Science Foundation. CIO Dorothy Aronson here when Fed Gov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment. Don't miss the first show of the new Fed Gov Today series, AI in Depth, coming Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 p.m. Explore the world of AI in government with leaders from DHS, HUD, VA, AWS, Palo Alto Networks, and EY. You'll learn how artificial intelligence is transforming the federal government. AI in Depth. Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and on the Fed Gov Today YouTube channel. Welcome back. Data as a strategic asset is not a new term in the federal government, but the kinds of data agencies are tracking and collating and using to make decisions is growing fast. Dorothy Aronson is Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer at the National Science Foundation. Dorothy, welcome. It's great to see you again.
Thank you.
How are you using data as a strategic asset at NSF?
Well, today we merge data from inside of NSF with information that we gather from various sources, and we can better understand the impacts of our research. So because NSF, we gather proposals from prospective researchers, we vet them through a strict process and make awards. But once the money has been allocated, it takes years sometimes to see the results of that research. And by joining our data with data from patents and publications and media, we can really get a much richer sense of how we're doing.
What was the journey like to get from where NSF started, I imagine, in a kind of a siloed environment, like every federal agency, to where it is today, where you have that free exchange of data with not just other governmental organizations, it sounds like, but NGOs too? Well,
of course, we started, the data was originally collected in order for the people in the agency to do reviews. And so that was the original purpose of that data. And it was really pretty much together. We have a single agency and our systems are integrated. So the data was there together, but it was formatted in such a way that it was very easy for systems to display the data. It wasn't really set up for human beings to look at and search through. And so what we've done over time is we've created first an enterprise data warehouse that translated that data into formats that people could understand. And now we're moving that information, or we've moved most of it to a cloud in the or a cloud container called a data lake. And from that data lake, we can connect to external data sources. We purchase some data, services that provide us easy and well-organized data to begin with. And so it's that combination of information that's incredibly powerful.
The cloud element of that is interesting to me because I think it's not something I would have thought of necessarily as an enabler of what you're talking about, but I think it goes to the point that other technologists across government like you have made, which is the cloud is driving things that people don't see on the surface, that the cloud is necessarily driving. Is that a fair observation?
Oh yeah, I think that what happens first off with the cloud, it comes with its own set plethora of tools. So whereas when in the olden days we had to buy each specific tool or create these tools, and now in cloud environments a lot of them come with these suites of tools. But also it's not that the data is physically located in a different location, it's that we're offering information to this platform in a format that's useful. So though it's hosted in the cloud, it's not the cloud itself that gives it power, it's the tools that come with that power, with that infrastructure, and also that other people have connections, that nowadays people build interfaces and connections to their products and they sell data as a product.
From a tactical perspective, have you changed the way that you collate and curate and store data at National Science Foundation,
Yeah,
Dorothy?
certainly. We, first off, you know, in technology, in the field of technology, you have no choice but to change.
Yeah.
So, you know, we certainly we now have a pipeline, you know, behind the scenes, these systems are taking the data and manipulating it, changing it from the transactional format that we captured into these formats that people think of their data in and want to see it in. So that has certainly changed a lot, and the technology is just constantly changing. And the beauty of this is that now we can buy more and more of these tools and plug our data in, as opposed to, again, in a time prior to this, we would have had to develop our own interfaces all the time, and now the interfaces are part of the tool.
An interesting term you used there. You talked about the way that people think of their data. It's almost like it's a thing, a living thing.
Right. I think that when people imagine that we have data. Yes. But to have data that is in a PDF format, for example, we now have machine language, things that can process natural language and understand the information within the data elements that we've captured. So there's data that's tagged. What do I mean? I mean that there's data that comes to us in little fields, and then there's these big or more interesting clumps of data that come to us in documents. And now we have the means to connect those things together so people can search on a certain term and the information comes back to them in a format that is familiar to a human being as opposed to a computer.
What does the evolution of all these tools mean for the future of data, do you think? What would you advise your peers across government to be thinking about today about data?
One of the most important things about the emergence of artificial intelligence, I think, is that it requires the data to be shaped differently than the transactional data. So one of the things that's very hard to do, and this might be where the word silo is coming from, is that the information has to be taken from its original format and reshaped, and artificial intelligence helps that, but along the pipeline. But it's also important because if AI tools are going to be set on top of that data, it has to be accurate. AI, the way artificial intelligence is working these days, it's only as good as the data that it's sitting upon. And so as a data person, you have a new level of responsibility in order to provide clean data to the public or present it to the systems that are going to be using it.
What does that mean for the person in the role of CDO, in this case you, for your job responsibilities, for the way that you execute on delivering what you just described?
So within NSF, we have a very highly distributed group of people doing data analytics, and they're all doing it for different purposes. The CDO's job, at least for today, is to ensure that there's a strong cultural foundation in the agency so that these distributed data analytics people follow a set of principles and governance and use the data within the framework that the CDO outlines. Otherwise, you can accidentally, two people could accidentally create reports that say conflicting things. So it's important to, again, we start with the foundation being the community, the cultural aspect of adoption, then there's governance on top of that, and then there's a small part which is the clean data itself and the tools we provide to those analytics people. So the job is really very much about bringing people together.
It's great to talk to you again, Dorothy. Thanks very much for joining me.
All right,
Appreciate having you come on the program. You can read more about data at NSF and across the federal government at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment. Don't miss the first show of the new Fed Gov Today series, AI in Depth, coming Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 p.m. Explore the world of AI in government with leaders from DHS, HUD, VA, AWS, Palo Alto Networks, and EY. You'll learn how artificial intelligence is transforming the federal government. AI in Depth. Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and on the Fed Gov Today YouTube channel. Welcome back. In today's event spotlight, GAIN 2023, the premier government marketing conference, is coming October 17th to the Ritz-Carlton in Tyson's Corner. Government Marketing University's GAIN conference will host the leading minds in marketing to the federal government. I will see you there to kick off the conference the morning of October 17th. You can find a link to read more about the conference and register on the events page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today returns next Sunday morning at 10:30 with an inside look at how the VA tracks employee satisfaction with the Chief Human Capital Officer at VA, Tracy Tyrett. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next Sunday. Have a great week. Don't miss the first show of the new FedGov Today series, AI in Depth, coming Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 p.m. Explore the world of AI in government with leaders from DHS, HUD, VA, AWS, Palo Alto Networks, and EY. You'll learn how artificial intelligence is transforming the federal government. AI in Depth. Tuesday, September 26th at 8:30 on WJLA 24/7 News and on the FedGov Today YouTube channel.